My name is Dr. Maggie McHugh. I am from Wisconsin, which is in the United States, the northern United States. Our state borders Canada. Specifically, I am in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is on the Mississippi River, which is the biggest river in the United States. I teach math. I work with middle school students whose ages are between 11 to 14, so very similar to you. I also work with college students studying to become teachers. And I teach them how to work with middle school students. So it's a really beautiful role.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would like to request one of my students to interact with you. Subramania Srinivas, would you like to start first?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Subramania
Hello,
Srinivas.
ma'am.
Good morning. Hello.
How are you, ma'am?
I am very good. It is good to meet you.
Thank you, ma'am. This is Subramania Srinivas, 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Now, I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes, please.
What qualities should a 21st century math teacher possess?
What qualities should the 21st century math teacher possess? I believe they need to possess a spirit of investigation. I think so many math teachers love math because it's problem solving. And we want our students to see math as a way to solve problems. But we often just give students, unfortunately, here in the United States, many teachers just give students the answers. And the better way to do it is for you as students to find out the answers, to investigate, to solve problems, to be creative in your solutions. So I think a spirit of investigation is really important. Thank you so much for asking your question.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hello.
My name is Rutika, an 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I am so privileged to interact with you. Namaste from India. Here my question is, what can teachers learn from PISA?
Ooh, what can teachers learn from the PISA? In where I'm at, we don't do the PISA. That is something that's not common in the United States. However, when we do take it, I think students have to learn how to use their words more to describe mathematics and describe their solutions. And that's something that's really important when you're able to explain how you got something, not just the steps. Because that means you really understood it. So I think the more that we can help our students actually understand the math, interpret math, see math in authentic contexts, the PSIA normally has very authentic data. That would be really helpful for students because math really is all around us. So thank you for your question.
Thank you for the answering.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering to my question.
So, Gayatri, over to you.
Namaste, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Gayatri, an 8th grader from Jilla Parishad High School, Ilavaram. I'm very happy to ask a question, ma'am. Can I ask, ma'am?
Please.
What math topics do you teach at your school? Can students apply them in their real life?
Yes, this is something I am really passionate about. We still study all the math topics of geometry, statistics, equations, ratios. But what I do is something called project-based learning, where my students are learning about these concepts and applying them right away in a project. So a project my students are doing right now is called the Backpacks Project. Each of them has a client. Their clients might be a parent, a sibling, an aunt or uncle. I even have one student whose client is their dog. And they are making a backpack specific for that client. With it, they are learning concepts. These are sixth graders who are learning concepts of area of shapes, volume, surface area. As they design and put together these backpacks, they're exploring unit rate when they have to purchase the fabric and the zippers and figure out how much per square centimeter or per square meter. So that's a project we're doing. In the end, this hasn't happened yet, but in the end, my students will share their custom-made backpack with their client, and their client will give them feedback. And I feel this is very real world because someday my students will be working with other people and often need to make sure, we say here in the United States, like the customer is always right. And so we need to make sure that we are communicating effectively. So that's a project my students are doing, and it's very applicable to real life right away.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
This is Husniya, a 7th grader from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I am so glad to interact with you. Can I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes, you may.
What techniques do you use to engage difficult students?
That is a really beautiful question. And I think the first thing I work on is getting to know that student and having a relationship with them so that I know what they like, what they're passionate about. Because often my students might not be excited about mathematics. That's not their very first passion. But I have a student who's really excited about skateboarding. This student is skateboarding all the time. And I was able to help the student find some mathematics. We were talking about this idea of unit rate, and speeds are all unit rates. When you say I skateboarded or I walked or I drove or I ran, so many in the United States, we often say miles per hour, but kilometers per hour, meters per minute. And so I had this student skateboard and time himself. And that was a way for me to engage with him with mathematics. So a lot of times, difficult students, they're difficult because they don't see a reason for math in their life. So if I can help them find that reason for math in life, we've at least found a common place to start. And that to me is what's really important. Thank you for your question.
Husniya, I think you have one more question. Please go ahead with that question too.
Yes, sir. Do students' backgrounds influence how they learn math?
Yes, absolutely. That background influences the math. I believe some students have had opportunities in their life, whether at home or through different activities, to just be surrounded by math more, or they've had adults in their life who have shown how math can be really powerful in their life. And so they often just have that natural curiosity. For example, students who play board games, they often have a lot more mathematical intuition. But math is something that can continue to grow in your brain. Do you talk at all about your brain and how like elastic it is and how it can keep growing? Your brain can keep finding connections. So sometimes I just need to introduce my students to those math connections. And through those connections, my students can come to find a way that math is connected in their life. So, yes.
So Maggie, in fact, I had a very poor math background when I was in high school. I don't know the reason. Maybe the primary school high school, the same story. So I was very, very poor, and I managed to get the pass marks, I think, at the end of my schooling. But I still have my own regrets why I didn't perform well in math. So when I recollect, whenever I recollected those moments, I thought that there should have been a brilliant math teacher. So had I had a brilliant math teacher, probably I would have shown much better passion towards the math. But unfortunately, I didn't enjoy math. But still, there are some students like me in every school. So,
Yes.
what would you suggest for these students, especially the teachers who are teaching math, while dealing with these students? Because if you scold them, if you just humiliate them in front of their friends, that you can't learn math, you are unfit for learning math. So, what kind of strategies that math teacher should adopt in order to deal with this false beginners, or maybe the students who are not good at math?
Yeah. I've definitely had those students who, whether it's the teacher or a family member, said, you're just not good at math. And we talk about our math identity. And I've even had students write their math autobiography, and they tell me their story of their experiences in math. And sometimes those stories are rather sad. And that is tough, but I think we need to tell our story. And then by sharing our story, we can rewrite our futures. And to me, that's what's so powerful is I can share my story. I was humiliated when I was in third grade with mathematics because I was a girl. Right. And they said, you're a girl, you're not going to win this math game. This boy, his name was David Korger. I am 35 years older than when I was at that time, and I still remember this. And they said, David's going to beat you because he's a boy. And that was really tough on me. But here I am many, many years later sharing that love of math because I had some teachers, specifically a seventh grade. Seventh would be teaching like 12 and 13-year-olds. This seventh grade teacher, Mrs. Frick, she found a way to bring me back to mathematics. And so teachers play a powerful role, but also I think when we can share our story, we can rewrite our futures.
Hi, ma'am.
Good morning or good evening.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Padmaja. I am a 7th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Please.
How is your math teaching methods more effective than others?
I would love to say that all math teachers have effective methods because they need to be passionate about how they teach. When a teacher is really passionate, that excitement will transfer to their students. I think the way I teach through projects connects with students and shows them the authenticity of math. It shows how math can be applied right away. And so when I grew up in math classes, I'd often raise my hand and say, when am I ever going to use this? Right? But when we do projects, right away, my students see. So this backpack project I was describing, they see how they can use nets where you fold up a shape. They see area, surface area, unit rate, budget, multiplying with decimals. All of those concepts are coming to life right now, not in the, well, someday if you become an engineer, or someday if you study physics or chemistry. The math happens now. And I think that's what makes me an effective math teacher.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
Maggie, do you use more teaching aids or while you are explaining those abstract things sometimes in math to the students? or do you use the digital board, or do you use the technology to explain to them, or do you engage your students? Yeah. What sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I still use manipulatives. So base 10 blocks or chips with colors for positive and negative integers. But honestly, right now, when we're studying the nets of objects, I had every student bring in a box. Whether that box was a Kleenex box, a cereal box, a box from Amazon. We have a lot of packages that get delivered, and they had to undo that box and just look at the shapes and understand how those shapes were put together. We did the same thing with a soup can. We undid the label to look at what shapes are making a cylinder. So often we can also just find mathematical materials. So yes, we still do a lot of hands-on investigation.
Yes. So I happened to visit to USA. Here I observed one math teacher.
Right before COVID?
Yeah. So I happened to visit one math teacher's class. She used the biscuits. I think she used biscuits and the cream while teaching the math topic. And that
Yes.
I actually have never seen, in fact, in my whole life, using those eatables while teaching math. So I must say that she is a absolutely amazing teacher and using those eatables in teaching math.
Yes. Oh, kids love food. Another one I use are called Cheez-Its. They're little squares, and we use that to show area. My students make area models out of Cheez-Its. Food,
Yeah,
everybody loves playing with food and then eating with food.
absolutely. Sai Nagastri, over to you.
Hello.
I am Sai Nagastri, a 9th student from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Ma'am, I would like to pose a question. Can I?
Please.
According to you, what is the toughest thing about teaching math?
Oh, I think the toughest thing is something we talked about, which is the history of my students. When I get my students, when they come to me as 6th graders, they're coming from many different elementary schools. So they went to a lot of different schools. And when they start with me, they're starting what we call middle school. And because of that, they've all had very different experiences, a lot of different teachers. And so I am trying to start and establish a new base of knowledge. And that can be really difficult because some students have already maybe learned certain concepts and are ready to go further. And some students, those concepts are so far away, I need to fill in a lot of gaps and holes. And then some students come and they absolutely are excited for math class and others hate math. And so trying to reestablish a community of learners really takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, but it's something that is so worthwhile in the end. So I think that is what's tough about the position I'm in specifically.
Okay, thank you. Kishore, do you have one more question from your side?
Sir.
Yeah, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hello.
This is Nandakishore, an 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask you a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Please.
Why are you interested in this role?
I love teaching. I often tell people teaching is actually in my blood. So I'm what's considered a 4th generation teacher. My parents, so I'm a teacher. My parents were both teachers. My dad taught English and theater. My mom taught French. My grandmother was a teacher. She taught in what was called a one-room schoolhouse. So where there's literally one room, and she had students ages 5 to 15 all in the same room. And this was, back in about 1930s, 1940, right before World War II. And then my great grandmother, so the 4th generation, she taught reading and writing out of her home. And this was in the turn of the 20th century. So late 1800s, early 1900s. And we know she taught because we have ledgers that show people got reading lessons and writing lessons and gave her things like eggs and chickens and milk because we're in a farming community. So I consider myself a 4th generation teacher, and it's all I've ever really wanted to do, and I will be a teacher until the day I die.
Wow, that's really great thing, great story, in fact. So would you like to continue your maybe offsprings to continue in this particular profession?
Yes, I would love to.
Yeah, that's great. So any more questions from our side, students?
Sir, I ask, sir.
Yeah, Fatima, would you like to ask?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good evening to you.
My name is Fatima, an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I will so glad today to ask a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes, you may.
As a math teacher, how important is the relationship with the students?
Oh, so very important. I think I've talked about that relationship with students. But what's most important is being consistent with students. I'm not there to be their friend. I'm there to be their teacher, to be a mentor, to be a guide. And sometimes that's tough because I try to be really nice to my students because you are beautiful young adults. You are going to be our future. But some students then sometimes test me or they push limits, and I have to say, no, here's the boundary. This is what you can do. And once students know that boundary, then we've established a good relationship. What I love is that the students who I've had, when they come back years later and I'm able to see them, give them a hug and hear about their journey, that is what's so rewarding and fulfilling. And so I recently had a student reach out, and she just wanted to let me know that she's doing well, and she's studying abroad, and right now she's Singapore. And it's, coming from the United States all the way to Singapore. And she said the coolest part about it is that she remembers some of the things we did in 6th grade math. And she talks to her friends and they don't remember their math class. And so all she wanted to tell me was, thank you for making it memorable. And that just was so beautiful. I keep those emails. Sometimes I print them, and I have a folder that I keep those in and just pull out every so often, because I think in the end, that's why we teach. So thank you.
Thank you for answering my question, ma'am.
Yes.
So Maggie, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So in some schools, especially in my schools, some students, they show a lot of interest in playing the chess. So chess is one of the, I think, one of the intellectual games. So most of the students, they like to play the chess in my school. But there are some students, they are so reluctant to play the chess. So what kind of games would you like to suggest to promote mathematical or critical thinking among the students?
Yes. There's a card game with a board called cribbage. Do you know cribbage? Okay, that's
no idea.
another. Oh, you don't? Okay, I will have to send you some information about cribbage. That's a card game, but there's a board with some pegs. Students really like to play. That's a great game for mathematics. There's some different dice games that my students play. One is called Farkle. It's kind of a funny name, but that's a fun one. I think games can be a way students can find some fun in mathematics. And then I have a lot of games, and I'm happy to share them to you, that are like dice games just with boards, that I print off sheets and the students play. So I can print off, or I can put a folder of those games together and send them to you in a Google Drive at some point.
Okay, so you have been a math teacher for a long time. So
yeah,
what math topics you would like to see to be featured in your math textbook? Maybe you have a few concepts in math. So you are currently dealing with some math topics. Do you have any more math topics other than the topics that you teach to your students? Do you have very specific math topics that you want to be introduced to your students?
Well, in addition to geometry, I love statistics. And so I have some different statistics projects my students do, that I really love. That's a really good question, I guess. Because I've been in a system where they give us certain topics, I just sort of live in those. And I haven't really thought about the other topics I would want to include. But usually I tend to go towards geometry and statistics because they're the most, what I see, applicable right away in everyday life.
Yeah, that's right. So do you take the math textbook to your classroom every time, or do you have any instructions from your higher authorities you have to complete the syllabus from time to time, or do you have your own agenda to implement in your classroom? In India, we have a specific syllabus to be covered from time to time. For instance, if we start our academic year in the month of June, and from June to July to August, these 2 months we have a specific syllabus to be completed.
Yep.
So do you have such a syllabus, and you need to be finished in time?
Yes, so our syllabus, we call that here our scope and sequence. So our scope, what we what we cover, and then our sequence of days and events. We do have a scope and sequence, but we have some flexibility. So in our scope and sequence, when I see our geometry topics, and I see unit rate is something I want to do in the project, but not in that scope at that time, I just sometimes move it to make sure that it fits. In the course of the year, I need to make sure that I meet all of our objectives. And so often they give us a little freedom, and I'm still able to incorporate those lessons in, but then I just bring it to life in a different way. And my students, I think, often really enjoy that. And so if we're having fun in math, I feel like that fun is also translating into learning and translating into things they'll remember versus just quickly going through the material.
Yeah. So here we have one last question is coming up. So those who are good at math in your country or in your region, what they want to become in their future. So in India, irrespective of math background, irrespective of anything. So many students in India would like to become software technicians, software engineers, because they want to fancy their chances as a software technicians. They want to immigrate to other countries, especially developed countries. So what would be your students' dreams if they are good at math?
I think I try not to emphasize what they're going to become in the future, more than I just want my students to be happy, and I want my students to be fulfilled. And sometimes I think we put too much pressure on that future and not enough on just being a kid right now. My students' dreams are all over. I have a student who's absolutely fabulous at math, but he wants to be a beekeeper. And his family currently keeps bees. I think he will be using a lot of mathematics, especially if he runs his own business. And so I try not to put too much pressure on them. But my students, like your students, want to be engineers. I have someone who really wants to be an architect. That's very mathematical. I have students who are really into pharmacy right now. I have a student who wants to be a pharmacist. I think they have someone in their life who's a pharmacist. I have a student who wants to be a photographer for National Geographic and go travel the world. And so, I think their dreams are beautiful, and wherever they're at, I just hope they can see mathematics. Photography has a lot of mathematics when you think of reflection and scale and proportions. So I think we can bring math to life in any career my students are interested in.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for your time. And we have learned many interesting facts about yourself and your math teaching, and about many interesting facts about your country. Thank you so much once again. And we would like to work with you and with your brilliant students in any math topic that you suggest in future. So before we wind up this session, could you please give a final message to my students?
Okay. Wow. Well, my message is just to keep learning. The fact that you are reaching out and learning about different countries, different cultures, different students, so late at night, I see some of you in bedrooms. That is a testament to you as a person, because the more that you learn, we say knowledge is power. I believe that. And getting to know people, talking, getting those experiences is something that can stay with you for a long, long time. So keep learning, keep growing, and always, always, always remember you should be having fun in life too, right? If you're passionate, I love my career, so I'm going to stay with it. I really feel it's a calling. It's what I'm meant to do. And for me, that is going to be the most beautiful gift I can give the world. So find your gift, give it to the world.